Let's get weird into it. Number 8. The Parcel Post Kid. Imagine you are living in 1914. The world is on the brink of a devastating war. Industrialization is churning the sky into a nice shade of charcoal gray, and you have a problem. You want to send your daughter to see her grandmother. But there is a catch. Train tickets are expensive. They cost actual money, something you prefer to keep in your pocket. You look at the train ticket, then you look at the postage stamps in your drawer, and then you look at your child. The gears in your brain start turning with the rusty screech of American ingenuity. You realize that your daughter, at 48 pounds, falls just under the weight limit for the newly introduced parcel post service. Technically, she is goods. She is a package. And the U.S. Postal Service, in their infinite wisdom, hasn't explicitly written down a rule that says, "Please do not mail human beings." This isn't a hypothetical. On February 19, 1914, a couple in Idaho actually did this. They slapped 53 cents worth of stamps onto the coat of their 4-year-old daughter, May Pierstorff, and handed her to the mail clerk. She was processed, stamped, and loaded into the mail car of a train like a sack of potatoes with a pulse. She traveled 73 miles in the cargo hold, presumably sitting next to some farm equipment and a bag of grain, before being delivered to her grandmother's house. The mailman didn't even knock. He just technically delivered the child. Because May Pierstorff survived the journey without becoming lost in the mail or canceled by a sorting machine, the Postmaster General Albert S. Burleson had a panic attack. He realized that if he didn't act fast, parents across the nation would start mailing their toddlers to summer camp to save a buck. The very next day, a regulation was frantically scribbled into the books. Humans were no longer classified as mail. May was the straw that broke the camel's back, forcing the government to legally clarify that children are not, in fact, standard shipping crates. Number 7. The Shoe Bomber. You are standing in a security line at the airport. It is 6:00 a.m. You are tired, you are dehydrated, and the person in front of you is arguing about the fluid dynamics of a bottle of conditioner. Then, you reach the plastic bins. You, a dignified adult human being, are forced to sit on a cold bench and untie your sneakers, exposing your socks to the unfiltered atmosphere of an international transit hub. You have to hop through a metal detector in your stocking feet like a toddler learning to walk. Why do we do this? Why is this a global ritual of humiliation? It is entirely because of one man, Richard Reed. In December 2001, Reed boarded a flight from Paris to Miami. He wasn't looking for a frequent flyer upgrade. He was looking to turn his Nike high tops into improvised explosive devices. He had packed enough plastic explosives into the soles of his shoes to blow a hole in the fuselage and ruin everyone's vacation permanently. But there was a flaw in his master plan. The explosives required a fuse to be lit. Matches. And Richard Reed had very sweaty feet. The moisture from his own nervousness and lack of ventilation dampened the fuse. As he struggled to light his sneaker on fire with a match, a sight that alerted flight attendants because, generally, passengers do not try to ignite their footwear at 30,000 feet, he was tackled by the crew and passengers. He was restrained with belts and headphone cords, the DIY handcuffs of the skies, because one man decided to weaponize his footwear. Billions of people now have to participate in the collective podiatry exam that is TSA screening. We take off our shoes not because it catches terrorists, but because Richard Reed couldn't find a dry pair of socks. Number 6. The Unpronounceable Name. Sweden is known for many things. Flat-pack furniture, meatballs, and a government that really, really wants to be involved in what you name your baby. In 1991, two parents, Elizabeth Hallen and Lasse Diding, decided to protest the Swedish naming law, which requires government approval for children's names to prevent future bullying or confusion. The parents felt this was an overreach. They believed that if they wanted to name their child Toaster or Existential Dread, that was their business. To prove their point, they submitted a name for their son that looked like a cat had just suffered a grand mal seizure on a keyboard. The name was BRXXMNPRLMNPRXFILMAXIUP That is 43 characters long. It includes numbers. It looks like a Wi-Fi password for a secure government facility, and the parents insisted that, in the spirit of artistic expression, this monstrosity was pronounced Albin. The Swedish tax authority, which handles population registration, stared at this typographical train wreck and said, "Absolutely not." The parents were fined. They tried again, submitting the name A, pronounced A. Denied. The court battle that ensued solidified the strictness of Sweden's naming laws. Because of this one couple's attempt to troll the bureaucracy, the government doubled down. Now the list of banned names in Sweden is rigidly enforced, preventing anyone else from naming their child after a corrupted hard drive sector. The boy, by the way, just goes by Albin, presumably saving him from a lifetime of spelling his name out for disgruntled baristas. Number 5. The Hot Coffee Lady. You know this story. Or at least, you think you know this story. It's the punchline of every joke about frivolous lawsuits. Oh, I spilled coffee on myself, I'm going to sue and get millions. It is the poster child for the American greed narrative. But the actual reason the law and corporate policy changed regarding liquid temperatures is because of the horrific reality of what happened to Stella Liebeck. In 1992, 79-year-old Stella was in the passenger seat of a parked car. She wasn't driving, she wasn't juggling. She was just trying to add cream and sugar. The lid popped off, and the coffee poured into her lap. Here is the part the late-night comedians left out. The coffee wasn't just hot. It was served at nearly 190 degrees Fahrenheit, 88 Celsius. For context, water boils at 212. At 190 degrees, liquid acts less like a beverage and more like napalm. It doesn't just burn, it melts. Stella suffered third-degree burns on 6% of her body. Her skin was literally fused to the car seat. She spent 8 days in the hospital, underwent painful skin grafts, and needed 2 years of medical treatment. She didn't want millions initially. She just asked McDonald's to cover her medical bills, which were about $20,000. McDonald's offered her $800 and told her to get lost. The jury saw the photos of her legs, photos that looked more like a horror movie prop than a medical chart, and they were furious. They found that McDonald's knew the coffee was dangerously hot, about 30 to 40 degrees hotter than home coffee, but kept it that way to save money on refills, figuring people wouldn't drink it fast if it was magma. The Stella Liebeck case created a massive shift in liability law and safety regulations. Now, your coffee cup has that little warning label. Caution. Contents hot. That isn't there because Stella was clumsy. It's there because a corporation served her boiling acid and then refused to pay for the bandages. Number 4. The 22nd Amendment. Imagine you have a boss. This boss is pretty good at his job. He gets you through a depression. He fights a massive war. He gives really good radio speeches. But then, he just doesn't leave. The years go by. Your hair turns gray. Your kids grow up. And he is still there, sitting behind the big desk, smoking a cigarette in a long holder, winning election after election. This was the reality of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Before FDR, there wasn't a hard law saying a president could only serve 2 terms. It was just a gentleman's agreement set by George Washington. Washington basically said, 2 is enough. I'm going back to my farm to make whiskey. And everyone else just politely followed suit for 150 years. It was a tradition, like not wearing white after Labor Day or pretending to like fruitcake. Then came FDR. He won in 1932, then 1936, then 1940. Then 1941 happened, and the country collectively decided, let's not swap horses in midstream, so he won again in 1944. He was elected to 4 terms. He died in office, presumably because being president for 12 years ages you in dog years. The Republican Party, having been locked out of the White House for an entire generation, looked at this dynasty and panicked. They realized that without a law, a sufficiently popular charismatic leader could essentially become a Democratic king. So, in 1947, Congress passed the 22nd Amendment, ratified in 1951. It explicitly states, no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. It is the FDR rule. It exists because one man was so undeniably good at winning elections that the system had to be patched to prevent anyone from winning that much ever again. It's the political equivalent of a video game nerf. Number 3. The Son of Sam Law. David Berkowitz was a nightmare. In the summer of 1976 and 1977, he terrorized New York City, calling himself the Son of Sam. He killed 6 people and wounded 7 others. The city was in a panic. Disco clubs were empty. Women cut their hair short to avoid matching his victim profile, and the tabloids were having a field day. When he was finally caught, because of a parking ticket, which is the most New York way to get caught for murder, the media frenzy didn't stop. It accelerated. Publishers and movie producers started sniffing around. They saw dollar signs. They wanted the exclusive rights to his story. They were ready to offer Berkowitz massive checks to tell them exactly how he polished his gun and what the demon dog in his neighbor's yard told him to do. The New York State Legislature looked at this and felt a collective wave of nausea. The idea that a serial killer could retire to a life of luxury on the royalties of his own atrocities was too much. They rushed to pass the first Son of Sam law. The law established that any money earned from a criminal selling their story must be seized by the state and used to compensate the victims and their families. It was designed to kill the murder-for-profit industry before it could even start. While the Supreme Court later struck down the original version for being a bit too rough on the First Amendment, revised versions exist in over 40 states today. If you commit a crime, you can write a book about it. But you better be prepared to donate every single penny of the advance to the people you hurt. Berkowitz inadvertently created a legal framework that ensures crime literally does not pay. Number 2. The Herostratus Ban. Let's go way back. Before the internet, before newspapers, the only way to become viral was to do something so impressive that people carved your name into stone. In 356 BC, in the ancient city of Ephesus, modern-day Turkey, there was a man named Herostratus. Herostratus was a nobody. He had no talent, no wealth, and no skills. But he had a massive ego and a desperate need for clout. He wanted to be immortal. He wanted his name to be remembered forever. So, he looked at the Temple of Artemis. This wasn't just a church. It was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It was a masterpiece of marble and gold, a building so beautiful it reportedly made grown men weep. Herostratus walked up to it and set it on fire. The temple burned to the ground. When the authorities caught him and tortured him, the standard police procedure of the time, they asked him why. He simply said, "So you would remember my name." The Ephesians were furious. They didn't just want to execute him. They wanted to delete him. They passed a law of damnatio memoriae. It became illegal, under penalty of death, to speak the name Herostratus. They wanted to erase him from history, to deny him the very fame he killed for. But here is the irony of human psychology. By making a law forbidding his name, they ensured that historians would write down exactly why the law existed. The historian Theopompus recorded the name to warn future generations, and in doing so, granted Herostratus his wish. We are talking about him right now. He hacked the system. The law designed to forget him is the only reason we remember him. He is the ancient patron saint of all publicity is good publicity. Number 1. The Nuclear Boy Scout. Science is usually done in pristine laboratories by people with PhDs and safety goggles. David Hahn decided to do it in a potting shed in his mom's backyard in suburban Michigan. In the mid-90s, David was a 17-year-old obsessed with chemistry. He wasn't making meth. He was trying to build a breeder nuclear reactor. And the terrifying thing is, he actually got pretty close. David didn't have access to uranium on the black market, so he got creative. He realized that common household items contain tiny, unregulated amounts of radioactive material. He bought thousands of dollars worth of smoke detectors to harvest the americium-241. He bought old camping lanterns to scrape off the thorium. He bought antique clocks to get the radium paint. He posed as a physics teacher to write letters to government agencies, asking for tips on how to isolate radioactive isotopes. And the agencies, assuming he was a professional, sent him the instructions. He aggregated all this material into a lead block in his shed. He used a drill to mix it, and it started working. The device began to emit dangerous levels of radiation. It became a neutron source. He was effectively cooking the neighborhood in slow-motion radiation. When the authorities finally found out, because David was pulled over for something else and warned the cops to be careful of the radioactive box in his trunk, the EPA had to be called in. They declared his mom's backyard a Superfund hazardous waste cleanup site. Men in moon suits dismantled the shed and shipped the dirt to a specialized dump in Utah. Because of David Hahn, the regulations regarding the sale and disposal of smoke detectors, camping lanterns, and educational interactions with government nuclear agencies were tightened. He proved that with enough determination and ignorance, a teenager can turn a trip to the hardware store into a potential Chernobyl. He forced the government to realize that the only thing more dangerous than a rogue nation with a nuclear program is a bored kid with a chemistry set and too much free time. And that's our time for today. More strange things are always coming, so I'll see you in the next one.